Pursuant to Section 5, Chapter 231, Public Law 1975, this is to state for the record that adequate notice of this meeting has been provided to the public by posting and maintaining the annual notice of regular meetings on the bulletin board of the municipal building, by mailing the annual notice of regular meetings for 2025 to the News Record and Star Ledger in December of 2024, and by filing said notice in the office of the Township Clerk.
Mr. Daffis,
He'll be here in a second.
Mr. DeLuca,
Here.
Engel, Ms. Herman,
Here.
Mayor Adams.
Here.
Whereas Chapter 231, Public Laws 1975, commonly known as the Open Public Meetings Act, requires that all meetings of public bodies be open to the public. And whereas Section 7A provides that the governing body has a discretion to permit, prohibit, or regulate the active participation of the public in any meeting. And whereas desire the governing body to comply with the provision of this act, same time to conduct its business in an orderly and expeditious manner. Now therefore be it resolved by the Township Committee, Township Maplewood does hereby prohibit, except as set forth in the formal agenda, active participation in deliberations of the governing body by the public, except as otherwise prescribed by law, does limit the public to the observation of the actions and discussions of the governing body at all its regular and special meetings.
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Daffis,
Yes.
Luca,
Yes.
Ms. Engel, Ms. Herman,
Yes.
Mayor Adams.
Yes. Please rise for a salute to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the 17th, 2025 meeting of the Maplewood Township Committee. Tonight, we have two proclamations on. One proclamation is honoring Cecilia Fabrizio on the occasion of her 100th birthday. I think okay. I only know you by email, so I'm glad you're here. Thank you for pointing yourself out. And then we have a proclamation that Deputy Mayor Herman will read on Juneteenth, which is coming up on Thursday and celebrated on Friday in South Orange this year. We have no board and committee appointments. Then we have public comment for agenda items only. We have an ordinance on final passage with regard to our filming ordinance, having us be film ready for Film Ready New Jersey. We have an introduction of an ordinance for salaries for salary ranges for employees. Then we will move into reports from departments. We have administration, attorney, and clerk. After that, we have reports from elected officials. Committee member DeLuca will lead off, committee member Daffis, then Deputy Mayor Herman, then I go last. There are no discussion items on for tonight. Then we have the consent agenda, mostly purchasing things that were approved in our capital budget, all the dump trucks and things like that. So, and then we'll have a second public comment on any item at all, and then we will adjourn. So with that, I would like to invite the family of Cecilia Fabrizio to come join me at the podium, if you will.
Okay.
Oh, no, this is great. We like to celebrate our residents. Come around with me here. You want to introduce yourself?
Yes, my name is Angela Knesny. I was born and raised in Maplewood, graduate of Columbia High School in 1973. Well, we're here to commemorate my aunt, who is going to be 100 years old on June 24th, lifelong resident of Maplewood, living in the house that she was born in, right on Essex Avenue. She never left. She worked at the Maplewood Library for 45 years.
Don't ruin all the suspense.
Contacted the mayor to see if, could we just send her a birthday card? And this is the result, and I am thrilled, absolutely
Is
thrilled.
she able to watch us tonight?
No,
No?
no,
Okay.
but I will.
Well,
give
you
her-
can show her the
I
tape
could
on
show her the
YouTube.
tape.
Yeah, yeah.
Exactly.
So I will read the proclamation.
Thank you.
join me over here. Okay, it's proclamation honoring Cecilia Fabrizio, lifelong resident, dedicated public servant, and cherished member of the community. Whereas Cecilia Fabrizio, a lifelong resident of Maplewood, New Jersey, was born in her family home on Essex Avenue, where she still proudly resides today, embodying the spirit and continuity of our community. And whereas Cecilia graduated from Columbia High School in the class of 1943 and went on to contribute to the workforce, first at Irvington Varnish, later Minnesota Mining, until the company relocated, and later through 45 years of dedicated service at the Maplewood Memorial Library from 1955 until her retirement in 2000, ultimately serving as the head of the periodical department. And whereas Cecilia married the love of her life, Ralph Fabrizio, in October of 1946, and they shared 75 joyful and devoted years of marriage until Ralph's passing in 2021, together building a life of warmth, partnership, and shared passions. And whereas as an avid golfer, Cecilia and Ralph could be found on the golf course at least 3 times a week, walking the full 18 holes well into their 90s. That's fabulous. Setting an inspiring example of healthy, active living and lifelong companionship. And whereas Cecilia has long enriched the lives of others through her many talents and interests, including knitting, landscape painting, and handmade artistic crafts, and through her devoted participation in family life as a beloved great-aunt and great-great-aunt to Melissa, Amy, Matthew, and Jackson. And whereas a woman of deep faith, Cecilia is a devout Catholic and has been a faithful supporter of both Immaculate Conception Church and St. Joseph's Parish, attending daily Mass and living a life of devotion and service. Now, therefore, be it resolved that I, Nancy Adams, Mayor of the Township of Maplewood, on behalf of the Maplewood Township Committee, do hereby recognize and honor Cecilia Fabrizio for her remarkable life, steadfast community service, and enduring contributions to the heart and soul of Maplewood. Her legacy of commitment, kindness, and vitality stands as a wonderful example for us all. Well, I hope she could tell that we're able to come until I get to work. She got the reminder. I got the card. Oh, okay, thanks. Oh, you're very welcome. How about a round of applause for Cecilia? That was a pleasure. Thank you for reaching out to me. We have a proclamation for Juneteenth, Deputy Mayor.
Yes. I am really happy to read this proclamation in honor of Juneteenth, which is coming up this week. Whereas on June 19, 1865, nearly 9 decades after our nation's founding and more than 2 years after President Lincoln signed the Emancipation Proclamation for enslaved Americans in Galveston, Texas, finally received word that they were free from bondage. As those who were formerly enslaved were recognized for the first time as citizens, Black Americans came to commemorate Juneteenth with celebrations across the country, building new lives and a new tradition that we honor today. In its celebration of freedom, Juneteenth is a day that should be recognized by all Americans. And whereas Juneteenth is a day of profound weight and power, a day in which we remember the moral strain and terrible toll of slavery in our country, what has long called Americans' original sin. A long legacy of systemic racism, inequality, and inhumanity. But it is a day that also reminds us of our indelible capacity to heal, hope, and emerge from our darkest moments with purpose and resolve. And whereas on Juneteenth, we recommit ourselves to the work of equity, equality, and justice, and we celebrate the centuries of struggle, courage, and hope that have brought us to this time of progress and possibility. That work has been led throughout our history by abolitionists and educators, civil rights advocates and lawyers, courageous activists and trade unionists, public officials, and everyday Americans who have helped make the ideals of our founding documents for all. And whereas to fulfill the promise of an America where all are created equal, that they are endowed with unalienable rights, in which include life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, it is upon all of us to fulfill this promise as a job of creating a better America and a better Maplewood. It's a shared responsibility. Now, therefore, be it resolved that I, Malia Herman, Deputy Mayor of the Township of Maplewood, on behalf of Nancy Adams, Mayor of Maplewood, and the Township Committee, proclaim June 19th, 2025, Juneteenth Day in the Township of Maplewood, and urge all to not only join in festivities and celebrations, but seek beyond the revelries and make sure Juneteenth doesn't become just another holiday, but a day of reverence and recommitment to working together to eradicate systemic racism and inequality in our society wherever it is found, and dedicated to the cause of freedom for all. Thank you.
Okay, that brings us, having no
Do it later.
board and committee appointments, brings us to our first public comment session on agenda items only. If there's anyone in the room who would like to speak to anything on the agenda this evening, you can come up to the podium, give your name and address, and you have 3 minutes to speak. Hi.
Hi, my name's Ethan Weinberg. I just want to note there are a number of individuals who I believe want to speak with regard to the filming. I don't know that we appreciate if there's an ordinance specifically for tonight. So I think we're probably happy to speak during this session or wait till the public comment later. Up to you.
Well, we don't have that long an agenda, so I think it really should be just agenda items only for this part, and that doesn't really, it's not pursuant to this exact ordinance necessarily, but
I just do want to know that the ordinance does grant the township administrator a lot of flexibility. And I think
yes.
that there are probably people who want to speak to how that flexibility would be.
Okay, if there are people who want to speak to the ordinance, that's fine. Okay, go ahead.
So I'll try to be quick. My name is Ethan Weinberg. I live on Claremont Avenue with my husband and young daughter, have been a resident for about 7 years. There's been a lot of filming on our street over the last few years. I think about 4 different projects being filmed in about as many years. This past week, we had the first of what we understand to be several filming days over the course of the summer. It was definitely initially intriguing when this filming first happened. It tends to be the same house that their home for projects, but it's become a bit of a nuisance. And I think that as we seem to expand the amount of filming that's going to be happening in the town, we should be thinking about how these projects are administered and the permits are granted, and on the day of filming, how the rules are enforced. There are 5 aspects to the experience that I want to quickly speak to. The first is notice and who's supposed to get it. I live further up this street, and my house has never gotten notice for any of these projects. I think the notice that went out specifically to those who were closer said that they were only going to be dealing with traffic on both sides of Claremont between Ridgewood and Claremont Drive. I'm just above that, and I've never gotten notice, but we had 2 trucks parked in front of my house for the most of the day, and for all these projects, we've had vehicles in front of my house, and we've never gotten any notice. So that's the first thing. I think it would go a long way to people being able to plan their days if they do get notice, to the extent that they're going to be affected. It does not seem like the production companies are giving notice to everyone who might be affected, and they're parking where they're beyond where they say they're going to be parking. The second issue is access. Part of the street was closed off, and I wasn't directly impacted, but I know some of my neighbors are going to speak to that as well in terms of not being able to get in their street, contractors not being able to get to their houses if they have work, which you obviously can't change and reschedule if you don't know that there's going to be a project on a given day. Safety is another particular issue. I'll speak personally. My daughter and husband were trying to get out of the house in a stroller. Given the way that our driveway is, they have to go down the lawn, and they have to navigate between 2 very large trucks to get to the sidewalk across the other side of the street. And they're almost clipped by a Sprinter van coming up the street that they wouldn't have been able to see because there are these 2 big trucks parked in front of our house. I know others had safety issues as well. The fourth thing is nuisance. There are a number of trucks who are just sitting there idling with their engines on, sometimes with no drivers in there. I don't know if that's for a production purpose, to keep refrigerators running or
Right.
equipment running, but definitely loud and emitting, obviously, whatever exhaust they have over the course of the day. And then the fifth thing I want to touch on is stakeholders and who gets a say. These projects are managed. It definitely seems from conversation amongst neighbors that those who are closest to the projects have, consultations with the production crews about how late they're going to be filming and approvals and and whatnot. But no one else on the street was consulted at all. So I think maybe to the extent that folks have to be consulted and give approval, that range of who is included in that conversation is expanded beyond what's currently contemplated. I don't know how much time I have left. I'm happy to.
5 seconds.
Okay, thank you.
4, 3, yeah. That's all you had? Is that, are you good? You all finished everything you want to say?
Others are gonna-
Others will cover. Okay,
speak of things, but those were the points.
fair enough. Thank you very much. Anyone else? Come on up.
So I'm Alex Patrone. I live on 10 Claremont Avenue. I've lived here for nearly 10 years. I heavily contribute to the schools in many ways. We just led, on the Dealey Bolden PTA, led a pretty significant initiative to overhaul the teachers, start to finish. We fundraise significantly for the school right around the corner. Heavily involved in coaching children throughout town, heavily involved in some of the local food banks. I also work, so does my husband, Michael Oliver. We commute to the city 3 times a day. We consider ourselves pretty good contributors to the town. What I really want to call to attention is there needs to be more process and control around this. We've lived in our home for 9 years. We've had in the 8 years that our neighbors have lived there, 4 productions, 4. The first one was pretty invasive and intrusive. Cool, I guess, because Morgan Freeman, great, that's fine. But light shining into our children's nursery late at night. This most recent one, we really didn't get notification. So I think notification is important. I think bringing key stakeholders in, directly impacted neighbors, to understand the process. What I learned is filming was going to happen until midnight. What I further learned is they needed signatures to film till 3:30 in the morning. What I then felt for over 2 weeks, and I have countless texts and engagements with location agents, production managers, neighbors, pressuring us to sign a piece of paper to allow the production company to do what they needed. Not for anything other than, I work in finance, profit margin. They don't need to film till 3:30 in the morning. In fact, I would argue they don't need to film until midnight. In communities where many of us, I would say 93 residents that were on an email exchange, lobbying for what we seek in Maplewood, some peace and quiet in community, some sense that we have some say in how our residential areas are impacted. And so what I asked for as part of this process, because this disruption was uncomfortable, the chaos, there were au pairs, nannies turned away with their children to park down the street and walk. My next door neighbor who felt harassed, literally her words, and I felt that as well, to sign a piece of paper, signing over their right to peace in the middle of the night because they were tired of the doorbell ringing and the calling and the text messages. And so while I think we should certainly think about how we raise revenues as a town, I work in municipal finance, I understand that. I think there needs to be a lot of data, maybe a bit of a committee focus on the impact to the community, both emotionally and financially, when we're renting out commercial spaces that impact downtown. Our stores closing and not making up those revenues, there's real impact to that. What I'd also like to understand, I asked for some of these stats from Pat Weary earlier today, is what percentage of our $60 million budget is coming from filming and production? How much does the town really make on this? And then I think beyond that, how many movies, how many TV shows, how many commercials, how many other things have been filmed in town in the last 10 years? What are the revenues of that? What is the heat map of impacted neighborhoods? Do we find that certain neighborhood streets, individuals that are better at marketing their home tend to be selected more? And then is there thought and care and concern around whether we say, yes, you can proceed, or no, this has happened too many times in these areas? What I'd like to see is a discussion around the broader impacts, not just for the individuals that might benefit from being able to, or the town from a revenue perspective, but a lot of the broader implications that clearly are putting a lot of us in a bit of chaos. And candidly, when my kids are walking to school, when all of us are trying to move about our residential neighborhood, we shouldn't have to worry about all of this.
Thank you.
That's my ask.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Please make sure you use the mic. Make sure you use the mic. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Erin. I live on Hemlock Court, 14 Hemlock Court, which is a cul-de-sac off of Claremont Ave. And I also just want to ground you that the neighborhood that's impacted, it's all the homes that are accessed from Claremont Ave between Ridgewood and Wyoming. So that's Hemlock Court and that's Claremont Drive. That's a horseshoe. Just to ground you in that landscape, I think it's really important. This filming is so disruptive. It significantly impacts our activities of daily living. Maybe you're familiar with an ADL in context of disabilities or senior living. But the major ADLs that are really impacted are our safety and our ability to move freely. It's so impacted. I implore you to understand the impact of filming activities to the community and neighborhoods that are impacted. Rethink the process and the protocols that are associated with permitting productions of this scope in residential neighborhoods. I want to share 3 unique experiences of my own. On production days, I walk my elementary school student down the hill because it's total chaos. Box trucks line the street up and down when they're allowed for setup to idle, craft food services trucks, porta potties, okay? All these things, always on Claremont Ave, sometimes on Hemlock Court. So I walk with my elementary school student. There is no crosswalk on Claremont Ave. There is no crosswalk on Claremont Ave, and you have 3 roads that intersect. So if you imagine a street, and I will send you a picture as a follow-up, the box trucks that are lined, individuals that can't cross, you're peeking your face just to see, can I cross? When can I cross? So I walk with my elementary school student. Personally, it was a near miss for me, and this wasn't even car traffic. I made it across the street. Passing the house where the filming is taking place, a crew member was setting up, carrying a ladder, a 6-foot ladder on his shoulder, turned from the sidewalk to the driveway and near miss to my face. For them, it's a workspace. They're at work. For me, it's my community where I'm walking my kid to school. I really was almost knocked out by the ladder. I mean, it's a mistake. Things happen, but okay, fine. You can let it go. The next situation, the bus transporting my oldest child from an out-of-district school was denied access to Claremont Ave for the ride home. I'm just going to decode for you. I know that Malia knows this. When a child rides a bus to an out-of-district school, they're there because they're a special ed student that needs a modified environment, and they're transported in one of those crappy minivans to their out-of-district school. The Maplewood police officer that was blocking Claremont Ave that day for the production would not allow the bus driver to ride Claremont Ave to Hemlock Court. The people driving these buses, I don't know what his or her ability is to communicate with the police officer on duty. I know that officer is doing the best that they can based on their duty, but it's a total failure. And you know what happened that day? He dropped my kid off a block away. He said, I don't know what to do. And my kid said, oh, I can walk through some backyards. So that bus driver dropped my kid off on Collinwood Road to walk through backyards. A failure on so many levels, but you know where it started? It started with a total failure of the coordination that's involved in the production setup. A total failure. On Thursday, I got home at 2:15 to see that Claremont Ave was blocked from Claremont Drive to Ridgewood. I went home, I looked at the notice because Hemlock folks got the notice. The notification was that the road would be blocked from Hemlock to Ridgewood from 6 a.m. to 10 a.m. When I called and spoke to our business administrator, he advised they weren't even supposed to block it above Hemlock. It was only supposed to be from Hemlock to down to Ridgewood. So my point is, understand the impacts of the filming, work on the process and the protocols. He admitted there is no oversight. The fact that it was 2:15, I asked to speak to production, they had no end time. They couldn't tell me when they would be done.
Okay, I'm gonna have to,
There's a specific
Have you
pocket of
wrap
homes that
up.
have been impacted. Why are we subject to this experience, and can you please make it stop?
thank you.
Hello. I'm not going to go over everything that's already been said. My name is Paul Sayre. I've been a Maplewood resident for 10 years. I'm at 10 Claremont Drive. We get all of Alex's mail at 10 Claremont Ave.
Oh,
Um, So I don't want to recap any of that. I just want to, my main thing is I want to make you aware of the safety concerns mainly. Okay. In one production, we have 90 families who are affected. Okay. One production, if it's happened 4 times, it's happening all summer. So it's not even 4, it's more like 30. I don't know at this point. And I don't want to point fingers here, but the residents are professionals. They are doing this for a living. They live at 12 Claremont Ave. So their home is a residence, but it's also being used as a business. And this has gotten out of hand. The main thing I wanted to do, I sent a letter to the town clerk, to Ms. Fritzen, and hand delivered it. I just want to make sure that these safety things that I've seen are communicated to you, okay? And I don't think it has anything to do with notice or anything else or how someone's doing their job. I just think the location is also problematic and the frequency. But I have 2 16-year-olds right now, so I'm essentially a chauffeur now. I just drive them everywhere. So I know that corner of Ridgewood and Claremont Ave probably better than anyone here, or you guys probably know it as well. I personally witnessed and was involved in, almost got back-ended because of these production trucks coming from Ridgewood onto Claremont Ave blind. And I slammed on my brakes when a car was coming down and I almost got hit from behind. I did not. I sort of almost wish I had, because then a police report would have been, but I'm being told by the neighbors at 12 Claremont Drive that these safety concerns are not valid. I also personally witnessed 2 children running through parked vehicles, one on Claremont Ave and one on Claremont Drive. One was really a near miss. The other one wasn't as much, but I just feel like if I didn't get up and say this publicly, I just really fear that something bad is going to happen. Our neighborhood, this area, is alive with children because there's 2 cul-de-sacs. It's wall-to-wall kids. It's the most beautiful thing you've ever seen. My kids grew up on Claremont Drive on scooters and stuff. When the cars are coming, everybody yells car and everybody goes to the side. Throw vehicles up and down these streets, and it's craziness. Thank you for.
thank you. I appreciate that. Is there anyone else in the room who would like to speak to this, to any agenda item? Mr. Wary, is there anyone online who's interested in speaking?
If anyone joining on Zoom would like to speak on any agenda item, please raise your hand. I see no hands, Mayor.
Okay, thank you. With that, we'll close this portion, this public comment. We will have more, and since the agenda that is up next is an ordinance on final passage on the filming ordinance that we are considering adopting, we will have a hearing on this as well, if anyone wants to speak to it. So, Ms. Fritzen, ordinance 3160-25.
Yes, Mayor. Item 8A, ordinance number 3160-25, is an ordinance to amend and restate Chapter 125 of the Township Code of the Township of Maplewood entitled Filming. This ordinance will revise provisions of the Township Code with respect to permits for filming within the township.
This ordinance has been published, copies posted on the bulletin board in the municipal building, and copies made available to the general public in accordance with the law. I'm opening a hearing on this ordinance to amend and restate Chapter 125 entitled Filming. Is there anyone who would like to speak to this ordinance before the Township Committee discusses? Seeing no one in the room, is anyone online, Mr. Wary?
If anyone on Zoom would like to speak to this ordinance, please raise your hand. I see no hands, Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Can I get a motion before we discuss? Or,
I'd like to say a few things before we move it.
okay,
Um, I really appreciate the comments that we received tonight about the massive disruption and burden on our fellow neighbors on Claremont. I live not too far from there, just a couple blocks away. And the ordinance that we are contemplating passing tonight does not take away authority from the township to revoke permits if filming does become too disruptive and the impact on the neighborhood is significant. And it doesn't take away local control or authority in coordinating, in better oversight, and so on and so forth. And based on the comments that we received tonight, I think that the township needs to do a better job in oversight and coordinating with our public safety officials better and coordinating with the residents themselves on the ground. Certainly, the film company has notice requirements that they have to make, but we are the ones who are allowing this to happen. So we need to coordinate on the ground and have presence and oversight to ensure that everything that we're being promised is happening is actually happening on the ground. And it sounds like that's not the case right now. So I'm going to ask our township administrator to look into that, right? And these are the kinds of things that the ordinance does allow for us to consider in allowing permitting: notice requirements, access, safety. Is it too much of a nuisance? And frequency, right? So let's say, for instance, that after this thing is over, we get another request for filming on Claremont. We have the authority to say, you know what? Probably not because of the frequency. I don't know what we can do in terms of restricting private property use as it relates to the particular, the home that frequents in filming, as it were, as it was reported anyway. That's something that we can look into. But I just want to acknowledge that the comments that we received are very reasonable and very important. Everyone needs to enjoy our town safely and equitably. And there are a lot of children all over town, but especially in this area. And we certainly don't want something terrible to happen because of a film, whoever is in the film, and no matter who the production company is. So I just wanted to say those things. I think we have work to do, in other words. And it doesn't change our passing the ordinance. The ordinance only allows us to be film ready. We already receive a lot of requests for filming in our town. And in light of some of the comments we received tonight and comments we received by email before tonight, I think we need to do a better job in stakeholder engagement and in thinking through a process, a uniform process. And certainly on-the-ground oversight, which is really what you all are talking about tonight. There really is no on-the-ground oversight, and that needs to change immediately. So we're going to try and do better. And with that, I open it up to any other comments from my colleagues.
Okay, so I do have a question for our attorney. There's proof of in section E on page 3 of the ordinance. It states, I'm trying to find the beginning of a sentence, where in the opinion of the township clerk and or administrator, applicant's production activity by reason of location or otherwise will directly involved and or affect any businesses, merchants, or residents. These parties immediately adjacent residents, businesses, and merchants potentially impacted by additional light, noise, foot traffic, vehicle, or traffic may be impaired shall be given written notice by the applicant of the filming at least 3 days prior to the requested setup date and be informed that questions or concerns may be filed directly to the township clerk. And then it asks for proof of service of notice. So my question is, based on that statement, I'm wondering if the ordinance either needs to be clarified or is being interpreted to mean, for example, when trucks are parked in front, say they're in a house at 10 Claremont, whatever, 12, whatever it is, and then immediately adjacent is where notice needs to go, but is it immediately adjacent to where the filming will take place, or is it immediately adjacent to where trucks might be parked, things like that? Does that, what I just read, allow for that to be interpreted the way I just explained? So that there should be more notice than just next to where it's filmed?
So the ordinance as proposed allows us, it's not just proximity,
Mm-hmm.
which would determine, so for example, if they were filming at the end of a dead-end street, and,
Right.
Closing the street 2 blocks up, right, I think we would be very reasonable in our exercise of the ordinance as written to say that, all of those property owners would need to be noticed.
Mm-hmm.
So I think we have the authorization in the ordinance as proposed
Okay.
to expand what our practice has been in the determining the affected area.
Right, so that in this case, for example, more notice may have been needed to be given to residents farther away from where the filming necessarily was taking place based on the interruption with vehicles, trucks, things like that. So was notice required just to the adjacent residences in this case? I'm not looking to blame anybody. We learn as we go with a lot of ordinances. So,
Yeah, I can describe what was required in this case,
okay,
specific to Claremont. So there were notice requirements for any place where production expected that trucks or crew or, any of their equipment would be on the street. So
Mhm.
generally that was on Claremont Avenue from Ridgewood Road up to Claremont Drive. And those, or the people outside of the immediate area of the filming, that was just a notice requirement. It did extend onto Hemlock because, there may be some impact there. Not that there would be on-street parking, but it was understood that they're driving through that area to get to
Right.
home. And so that was just notice requirement. We had also required that they
Get
they
sign-offs.
attempt to receive consent. So different than notice in terms of providing a letter and saying, yes, we
Mhm.
served it on the resident, explaining what we're going to do, but consent saying that, these are the hours of filming and here's the impact, and a signature line saying, I understand generally the impact that that this filming will have, and I consent to the township issuing a permit for filming.
Mhm.
We required that for 3 houses on either side of the residence where the filming is taking place. That's 6 houses on one side of the road and 6 houses on the other. And in this case, they received consent sign off from 11 of the 12 of those where we had asked them to
Okay.
receive consent. And so in specific to this instance, the permit was issued, even, with 11 of those 12 consent sign-offs. But we had further limited filming hours that that the company had wanted, understanding that there was still one person who had not provided consent, and that person was in very close proximity. And so, there was some reasonableness applied to this to try to find something that we felt was acceptable in the circumstance.
Okay, so, and you have limited some of the hours and requests that the filming company has made that you felt were unreasonable.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay,
And there are some where if the block signs off on it, so they're filming in another location in Maplewood, which, is very different than Claremont. The other place, Maplewood, to my knowledge, is the first time they're filming there. And so we haven't received the same level of feedback. And we have, on that block, received a lot of those consent sign-offs. So we have permitted them to film interior scenes into the early morning.
and in
Because
another house in another
Yeah,
street.
another house on another street, because those residents were aware and they consented to that taking place. So, that level of restriction differs based on the feedback from residents in the area.
Understood. So does this ordinance permit our administrator to say no, for example, to a house that has regular filming or seems to rent out their house, as one commenter said, that, almost as a business as well?
So, I mean, it's all going to be fact specific, but yes, ordinance does give the administrator the ability where it, we can reasonably determine that it's going to be, unduly disruptive to the surrounding area to either modify the conditions of filming, maybe, for example, provide off-street parking, don't park on the street, don't
Right.
minimize parking on the street, hire police officers to, help direct traffic. Unfortunately, it sounded like there was an issue with that, but,
Right.
or, modify hours, or if we cannot find, reasonable accommodations that will allow the action there without disrupting the neighborhood. Yes, the administrator.
Okay, so you feel that we have enough in this ordinance as it stands to give us the controls we need? And sometimes those controls may not be required until we realize that something's happening, just,
I do, and,
Yeah.
as you said, Mayor, sometimes the process and
Mhm.
realize, we are becoming a much more popular town to,
Mhm. Right,
and, is, fine tune.
right. Is there any of my colleagues want to
Yes.
speak to this ordinance? Mr. DeLuca?
Yeah, I support the ordinance, and the reason being is just what we're talking about. And I just want to read the section of the ordinance. I'm going to ask you, Mr. Weary, if you feel that this gives you the sufficient power of determination here. So the township administrator may refuse to issue a permit wherever the administrator determines, based on objective facts and a review of the application, and that filming at this location or the time set forth in the application would violate any law or ordinance, or would unreasonably interfere with the use and enjoyment of neighboring properties, unreasonably impede the free flow of vehicles or pedestrian traffic, or otherwise adversely affect the public's health, safety, and welfare. So in the future, if you were to get an application, and this is just hypothetical, on a street where there had been filming before, and maybe the neighbors felt was, the impact was disproportionate, it was too many and all that. Do you feel that this language would allow you objectively to make a determination that maybe we've had enough here for a while and we need to give it a break?
Yes. And, all facts. So last year, we had an applicant come before the township committee through my request that they were filming outside of permitted hours. It was interior shoot inside a residence, basically them and some friends, colleagues, and there were going to be 3 cars. So there are instances where maybe it's deemed to be appropriate, and there are instances, specifically, if you look at the facts of this shoot, where there are trucks and crew extending a long distance, having a greater impact there for a greater duration, we're absolutely. And that's a conversation I've had with residents of Claremont and Hemlock who have reached out to me last week and this week, and I feel comfortable making that determination. I also, have an intention of proactively reaching out to property owners to give them a heads up of that discretion now. Don't, so that they don't find themselves that they've agreed to something without understanding that it's this discretion. So that's something.
Well, the ordinance does give stakeholders, neighbors, a right to appeal the decision too. So that's also allows that to occur.
Yep, yep.
Just a sec.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Some comments to this, since it's somewhat of a discussion?
Sure.
All right. Okay, so we've, we became aware of, I guess, the extent of the problem on Thursday when we started to hear from residents of Claremont. I have gone to the filming scenes Thursday, Friday, and yesterday afternoon, and again today, because we're trying to tighten this up. I appreciate the input from all the residents. I've talked to most of the people who reached out to me. If I haven't talked to all of them, I will be reaching out this week. After speaking with them, we worked with the film crew to tighten up the impact a little bit. We worked with our police department. We've had some meetings with them and with the clerk to tighten up their operation a bit. I met with the executive producers of the film shoot last Friday to explain to them the gravity of the situation and the impact this was having to our residents. We have some intention of meeting with the New Jersey Film Commission. Mayor, you brought this to me. There are some areas that we don't have experience in, but maybe the Film Commission does and can provide us guidance on how we can get ahead of these problems, be proactive instead of reactive, where we find ourselves a bit in now. We look to that guidance from them, and hopefully that can help us going forward.
Right, and I would just suggest maybe the police officer on site, just make sure that none of the trucks is parked in such a way each day that they're blocking sight distance, or, that they're so close together that you have the issue where you can't see if something's coming. And on any given day that they're filming, since they move them. And with regard to idling, they shouldn't be idling unless there is a refrigeration component, Mr. Daffis.
Yeah, so I support the ordinance because it does give us broad authority, right? And the ordinance allows the administrator to revoke a permit that was given. So I do think that, and I'm glad that you are communicating with the production company and relaying back all of these significant concerns. The other thing that concerns me is whether or not we already found out that the notice didn't go to everyone that it should have. And we have broad authority to require even more broader notice than to the affected, however that's defined, folks. But what does the notice say? Because that leads me to my next point, which is consent. We heard from some residents tonight that they felt that their consent may have not been informed, meaning knowing all the particulars, and or their consent may have been under duress. So that's something that we should be talking to them about. It's not good enough that they're getting signed letters from everyone if they're pestering people to sign. That's not consent.
Respect to the substance of notice, the new ordinance does expand that somewhat.
Right.
Address where it's going to take place, a contact person and phone number from the filming company, the dates of filming, the start and time, the contact information for the township entity that is in charge of the permit, information reflecting the nature and number of the vehicles, where they'll be, whether there'll be an officer.
So we'll expand what is required for notices per the ordinance. Right now, you could receive one of two things, a notice or a consent form. So both of them contain generally the same information. So it's days of shooting, times of shooting, day or night, its interior, exterior, the film location, the description of the location, so, you know, traffic control, noise, lights, et cetera. The days of filming are all required on both of those notices. We'll add some new language. On the notice, so if you're outside of that more like immediate impact zone, on the notice, you just sign off that you received the notice and the film company returns that to the clerk. On the waiver, I drafted some language after we received some of this feedback last week from Claremont, to be more specific so that residents understand where they can become involved in the process. So it states dates and or hours of filming as noted, and this is if there's a waiver requested as well, which in most of these instances there have been. The dates and or hours of filming as noted above exceed what is permitted in the township's filming ordinance, chapter 125-3, and requires a waiver of the township of Maplewood. The township considers impact on public health, safety, and welfare when determining whether to issue such a waiver. The township requires written consent of property owners, business owners, merchants, and or residents who may be adversely affected by the township's waiving the express terms of the filming permit being issued. By signing the below, I understand the general impact of the filming, and I consent to the waiver being issued by the township.
Deputy Mayor.
Thank you. So I wanted to ask, I had two questions on this ordinance. Under, let me see, B, issuing of permits, number 4, I wanted to ask specifically about the hiring of off-duty Maplewood police officers, and if, is that something that you have discretion over telling them how many they need to hire and what they need to be hired for? Because when I'm hearing about safety concerns and especially with children walking to school, I'm wondering if, you know, we need more than just a police officer sitting in a car blocking, you know, cars coming in and out. We may need that officer to actively be making sure that the children are getting where they need to go safely. So is that something that you're able to do with this ordinance?
Yes, initially. So if we have any indication that the police department may need to be involved, then that becomes a conversation between myself, the clerk, and the chief of police. So we may say, you know, we see a need. They ultimately determine, with our input, but ultimately determine here's what is required to make this a safe area. So
They
So-
meaning
they
the
meaning
police.
the chief of police and
Yes.
the police department. I mean, there's sometimes this is delegated to people in his
Yeah.
department who have experience in this. So right now we have required police officers anytime they are blocking a roadway, even if it's intermittent, and if they are operating outside of the typical hours, so that we can ensure they're adhering to noise requirements and the like. If we see or if we believe that there is a need for that to be expanded to normal operating hours, we can do so. The police department in their routine patrols will pay special attention to these areas. And I think that in those patrols, they can determine if more police officers are present.
Thank you. I wanted also, if you could make sure and communicate to the police department about individuals that require transportation, so that, or individuals who live in the area who may have au pairs, so that other individuals can access. They need to be aware. So that needs to be part of the conversations when this happens.
There are instances where access is not permitted because of the nature of the shoot. So far, they've just had intermittent road closures. So you may have a time when someone wants to gain access to the roadway, but they're told for the next 5 minutes, the road
Mhm.
is closed, so they could park elsewhere, they could come back. I understand that's an impact, but you know, that's the reality and kind of what's going on there now.
So I wonder if when you're giving notice, if you can find out from residents if there are going to be situations where that's not going to be possible. Do you know what I mean?
On the notice, we indicates if there are road closures, and we can work to make that more clear.
Yeah.
already, but where there are road closures and information for now, for maybe the clerk's office, maybe myself, and definitely the film company, where any person who sees that notice, sees that there are road closures and expects a conflict, would be able to reach out to us.
So we just would need to make sure that, as Mr. Daff has pointed out, the notices go to a larger geographic area, and that the notices include information like the dates and times of the road closures, and that they adhere to that. So we need to make sure about that. And following right along on that point, I wanted to ask about the violations and penalties. It says any person violating this chapter or these rules and regulations upon conviction thereof shall be punishable by a fine not exceeding $1,000 per day or by imprisonment of 90 days or both. So I wonder if you could explain how that works, and if this is enough teeth in the ordinance, more than what we have currently, that would help us to really ensure compliance.
Yeah,
Consistent
it's
with-
consistent with the previous ordinance, so it was the same max of
Okay.
$1,000 a day. With a fine like this, where it's not a set fine, but a maximum fine, it's a mandatory court appearance. Nobody likes those. So that certainly helps. More than anything, though, any filming requires permitting from the township. And any permit issued, the operator would have to comply with the permit and with the ordinance. $1,000 is nice, but it's not near the motivation of obtaining permits and keeping your permit. And so far, that's been our conversation.
Okay.
My conversation with the film crew is, if you want to keep your permits now, and if you want to receive future permits, you need to comply with the ordinance and the permits that have been issued.
Okay. I would support this ordinance because I believe it gives us more authority to have oversight with regard to these filming locations, as we are obviously a very popular filming town. We want to make sure that everyone is accommodated and safe, and
Right.
so thank you.
I would just add that I don't think it's necessarily the fees for the company to film here so much that helps a town when filming. It helps our local businesses, helps the local economy, and has a little cachet to it too. So we'll just, I'm in favor of this ordinance, and I think, as my colleagues have stated, it gives us broad powers. And of course, as the residents who've reached out to us separately by email and who've been, I think, keeping our administrator busy for the last week. We know, we hear you, and we're glad that you're reaching out, and yeah, we'll do better. Anybody else have any more comments before I get a motion?
I'll move it, Mayor. I move this ordinance to be adopted as a whole and the clerk to be directed to publish the same as a passed ordinance in the Maplewood South Orange News Record according to law.
I'll second. Ms. Fritzen?
Mr. Daffis,
Yes.
DeLuca,
Yes.
Ms. Herman,
Yes.
Yes.
Mayor Adams.
Yes, thank you. We have an ordinance on for introduction, 3161-25. Ms. Fritzen?
Yes, Mayor, introduction of a new ordinance, number 9A, 3161-25, is an ordinance to amend classification of employment positions within the Township of Maplewood and to establish salary ranges for employees.
Okay, Mr. Weary?
Thank you, Mayor. We circulated an updated draft of this ordinance this afternoon. There were two titles in the ordinance that were mistakenly omitted. That is for art manager and the Soma Two Towns coordinator. Both of those were added back into the ordinance, and they were done so at a grade that is consistent with what it's been in years past. So there's no real change there other than adding it. So that's what you'll be considering tonight. Because this was added today, the hearing will be now held on Tuesday, July 15th, as opposed to Tuesday, July 1st, and that's because of the publication requirements.
Okay.
Thank you, Mayor.
Does anyone have any questions on this? Okay, because there was that change. All right, then I'll move the passage of this ordinance on first reading, its publication according to law in the Maplewood South Orange News Record, and a hearing to be held on July 15th. Can I get a second, Mr. Daffis?
I'll second.
Mr. Daffis?
Yes.
Mr. DeLuca?
Yes.
Herman?
Yes.
Mayor Adams?
Yes, thank you. We'll move to reports from departments. We have, Mr. Ware, you're talking an awful lot tonight. Do you have a report for us?
I do. So first on the sewer and stormwater billing, typically we send out our sewer billing in late May and it is due in late June. This year, we are adding our stormwater billing to our sewer billing. So residents will receive it on one bill. And we're still finalizing some of the, uploading all that data into our billing program. And so it's taken us a little more time to get that together. So instead of late May, due late June, it will likely be mailed late June and due late July. So we'll put out some communication to the public this week who may be expecting to see that utility bill, that they can expect to receive it late this month. That's the first thing. Second thing is smoke testing. We put out a public notice on Friday, that we would be doing smoke testing generally in the northeast section of the township. That is done in the sanitary sewer line, and, it is done in the, the sanitary sewer line. And what we're looking for is rainfall that is going into the sanitary line when it should be going into the stormwater line. So we put out a notice. Every resident whose area will be tested received a door knocker. They pump smoke into the system, and you may see smoke coming out of vents in your home on the outside. It may come out of your roof leaders. It may come out of a basin in your yard if you collect rainwater there and it's inappropriately connected. And that's what we're looking for. It may also, if there are, let's say, cracks in your plumbing inside your home, that may result in some of the smoke going into your house. It's a good thing to identify that, because it means if the smoke can enter your house, sewer gases can also enter your house. And so we have crews on the street who are observing this. Any resident with concerns can reach out to the Department of Public Works. They can talk to any of the crews that are operating in the street. We are hopefully going to conclude the program next week, weather permitting. That's a good thing. All right.
Okay. I just want some clarification. So are these specific addresses or all the homes in one area
All the homes in an area.
where we have experienced too much flow in the, storm sewers
Yeah.
because of that? Too
Yeah.
much flow?
Sanitary,
I'm
sanitary.
sorry.
And-
Sanitary.
Thank you. And so how we
Which has
identified what
been
areas to do this.
Backing up in people's
Yeah,
homes.
that's right.
Yeah.
How we identified the areas to test is we put meters into the sanitary sewer line, and during rainfall events, we look to see where there were dramatic spikes in sewage flow, because generally the sewage flow should be pretty consistent. You know, when it starts raining, everybody doesn't jump in the shower or flush their toilet. So if you see that there is a dramatic spike in the sanitary line, it's likely because rainfall is entering into the sewer line. And so we place those meters throughout town, identified the areas where we think there's the most of this infiltration into the sanitary. And those are the areas that we're smoke testing first. It could be that we roll this out into other areas of town later on, but this is the area we're focusing on now.
Okay, did you, as Chair of Engineering Public Works, we've been talking about this for a while. Did you want to add anything?
Yeah, I just wanted to say two things about why we should be doing this. One is that we want to protect the integrity of our sanitary sewer. When we get surcharges of a lot of storm water in the sanitary sewer, it could destroy the sanitary sewer or disrupt the sanitary sewer. So we want to deal with that and try to eliminate that. And the second thing is our joint meeting bill anticipates a certain percentage of infiltration of rainwater in there. So if we can show that we're taking steps to remove some of that, it will positively impact our charges from the joint meeting.
Mm-hmm. And it's a public health issue, as we said.
Okay. You have anything else?
I have more. Springfield Avenue, because I expect questions on Springfield Avenue. Obviously, there's a lot of work going on Springfield Avenue. It is creating a lot of disruption to our residents. The work generally requiring the road closures is New Jersey American Water, who is replacing lead service lines. They have a subcontractor, Montana, who's performing the work. Those service lines extend into the roadway and connect with the water main that runs in the roadway. Because of that work, they require road closures. We expect that work to conclude next week, hopefully early next week, but next week on Springfield Avenue. And then after that, the road closures will be lifted. There still will be some work on Springfield Avenue, so New Jersey American Water will still be doing some work behind the curb, but it won't result in road closures. And the town's contractor who's doing curb upgrades, ramp upgrades, concrete work, they're still going to be working along Springfield Avenue. But again, they won't require road closures. The next time we will have road closures on Springfield Avenue is in August, when we repave the entire length of Springfield Avenue in Maplewood.
Paving east to west or west to east?
I don't know.
East to west.
West.
I believe we're starting down at the
By the
at,
Wawa.
Boyden.
Yeah.
That's Springfield Avenue. The township had just circulated today advertisement of the historic preservation element of the master plan. There's a few components of that, so I encourage everybody to look at the email. It includes a draft of the plan. It includes a notice of a public meeting to be held not this coming Saturday, but the following Saturday, June 28th. That will be from 10 a.m. to 12 p.m. at the Woodland in the Parlor. And then there is a questionnaire, a 12-question questionnaire, asking residents about, different aspects of the historic nature of Maplewood and what they appreciate and how it impacts them, and, what their experience with the Historic Preservation Commission are. So I'd encourage residents to get involved and engaged in that. Again, attending the public meeting, completing the questionnaire, and reviewing the draft of the historic element for that. South Orange, I'm sorry,
Wow.
I have a lot
This is
tonight.
the
I have
longest-
questions about that,
Yeah, okay,
if I may.
sure.
I just saw that email today.
Yeah.
And I was like, wow. So we already have a draft new element?
Historic element, yes.
Who drafted it?
We have a consultant, so we received a grant through.
I remember that, but that happened so quickly?
Barton and Ross. I mean, yeah,
Oh, it's a
yeah, we've been
couple
working with,
months.
yeah. The Historic Preservation Commission has been very involved and has done a lot of work on this. We have kind of a standing group that meets monthly with the consultant to go over the progress. That includes members of the Historic Preservation Commission, the State Historic Preservation Office, myself, Mr. DeLuca, a member of the Zoning Board, and Planning Board. Planning Board.
Liz Ward.
And yeah, we've all been meeting monthly, and it's making.
Wow, that's pretty quick. And the survey though, I filled out the survey.
Okay.
So you see me in there
So you
because
just disregard that.
it asks for your name. But the survey doesn't go to everyone, does it? Or is it just certain stakeholders?
Yeah, it's a public survey, so anybody can complete it. We do have a question on your title if you hold a municipal office. So you, for example, a member of the Planning Board, Zoning Board, Historic Preservation Commission, we would want to know if they are filling out the survey and what their responses are. But the survey is open to any member of the public. We encourage them to complete it.
Yeah, we should get that out there.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Yep, you're welcome.
And you have more to report?
I
Just
do.
on, just a quick,
I
it's
never.
going to go to the planning board, that the historic element's going to go to the planning board on September 19th. And then we're going to bring it for a short presentation here to the Township Committee. Even though we don't pass it, it's just, we want to make sure everyone understands what it's about. So that's going to be on September 16th. And it has to be to the state and done by September 30th.
Two more, Mayor. I'm sorry. So the pool, we have opened our pool to residents of South Orange while they are completing the work on their pool. They haven't announced an opening date yet, but since I'm before you, I just want to discuss the possibility that we may need to extend when they are able to use our pool. We've been the township committee's been flexible and given discretion to myself and the director of community services to figure out exactly what works right. And so far it has. So,
Hasn't
certainly.
been exactly pool weather, though.
Yes, so certainly that can continue, but we do expect that starting on Sunday and at least through next Thursday, we will have extreme heat, which will likely result in us opening the pool to all residents. And so it's a very broad request because I don't know right now where South Orange stands on opening or not. But we would just ask that, if the township committee is willing to continue to give discretion to the director of community services to work with South Orange on appropriately making our pool available if we can. Likely on heat index days, we won't.
Right.
Just because we expect an influx, but before that, and should it extend after next Thursday, and should South Orange need a pool after next Thursday, that we can continue to work with them to provide the pool as available.
Okay, and when does school let out? Or the half
So-
days this
so-
week?
This week.
Yeah, that's where I have a question. So school ends on Thursday of this week. So starting on Monday of this week, our pool has been open in the afternoons from
Right.
4 to
4 to 8.
8. And then on Friday, it's open from 2 to 8 because school is out that day. And then then after that, starting next week, it's open all day, weekday. So I think that this is, originally, South Orange had asked for 3 weekends, but now we're getting into the point where it's not just weekends, it's daytime. And I believe that our community services director was asked also about accommodating the swim team every day. And so there's requests that are coming in, and I think that she has been, told them what the pool can and can't do.
Well, we have our own swim teams who have
Mhm.
practice and they get preference, obviously, and I'll leave it to the Director of Community Services to figure out what her staff and the guards and everything and the members so that the pool is available to them. I'll leave it to her to make those decisions of what works. My concern is when we usually have the forecast for, what is it, 3?
3 days.
consecutive-
Yep.
3 consecutive extreme heat days, then we open it to all residents. So how do you expect to handle that? You don't know it, like if South Orange coming to,
We spoke with the director today, and we don't expect that on those heat days, we would be able to accommodate South Orange.
okay, so you will let them know.
One, just because of the sheer number of, crowds we have, but two, the heat also affects our employees, and we want to make sure we're giving them adequate breaks.
Right.
So I don't expect that we'd be able to accommodate South Orange.
And also, it's only open to South Orange pool members,
That's right.
right? Not the entire town.
Thank you.
Yes,
And South Orange has been very, very understanding and appreciative of everything we've given them so far.
sure, sure. Well, we're happy to help, but again, those extreme days, we may need to, but we'll leave it to you guys unless anyone has any thoughts besides what we talked about. Nope. Okay, what's your last thing?
Promise. So,
Any motion to go past 9:30 because
Yeah, yeah, it
Patrick
might
Drift
happen.
was-
Just to listen to Mr. Weary.
yeah, I apologize. And so we received another request from the film company for a waiver of the restrictions in our ordinance. And so we've been bringing them to you as they come. They work out their schedule about 2 to 3 weeks in advance. And
I'm sorry, the phone company?
film.
Film. Oh,
Definitely not phone. No,
a
the film
different, the
company.
same film company?
Same film company. So we've been giving them permits at about a 2-week clip, which is actually helpful to us, and I think it gives us a little more control. They've come back and asked us for permission to operate outside of what is allowed in our ordinance for this Friday through next Friday. So this Friday, June 20th, they would start earlier than is permitted, 5 a.m. They are doing interior, exterior filming with traffic control on Maplewood Avenue between Inwood Place, also on Duran Road at the Maplewood train station. And so they're requesting that it will require traffic control. It will have an impact on some of the parking. If approved
By the train?
by the train station, on Maplewood Avenue.
Okay.
And we're
So
working,
it's just a Friday,
that's just for Maplewood Avenue is just a Friday,
and the train station, which day?
also Friday.
Friday.
So Friday's a light day.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
So at the
The light
train
day
station.
And
Anyway,
they've worked
plus
with New
it's a
Jersey
holiday.
Transit to receive all the approvals necessary from transit.
And it's
So
a
it-
holiday for some people.
It will impact parking both on Maplewood Avenue and on Denell while they're working at the train
Are
station.
they going to sweep and wash the floor in the train station for a change?
I think it's
But they're
only
gonna
exterior
re-
shit.
Ah, too bad. Well, there's enough, there's enough work to do there. They can fix up the building.
We'll leave that to transit. And then next week is at the Bergdorf. So there's some exterior shooting requiring traffic control, but the majority is interior. And they're looking for early start times, 5 a.m., 6 a.m., and some late end times, 10:30, 11:30, 12:30 a.m. Again, those are interior when they're going, especially past midnight. So we'll continue to work with them. You know, there may be road closures, there may be impact to parking. If it's approved, we'll continue to work with them to minimize.
I'd suggest making the Village Alliance Director aware.
Yes,
Yes,
and
they'll
they
be-
have been involved in the conversation so
Yes.
far, and we'll make sure that they understand about these approvals and
And then, of course, the residents around there.
yes, who similar have also received notice, and we will check back to make sure that it complies now with the current version of the ordinance.
So both of those time periods, the early time and the late time, are beyond our noise ordinance. So even though it's interior, typically, you know, they have to bring things from outside. They may be talking outside. They may be going to get a coffee at the food truck. So
Yep.
they need to know that we have a no noise ordinance in the front end and the back end.
And further, when they're operating outside of what's permitted in our ordinance, there will be police officers there who we
Okay.
will work with to ensure that those noise ordinances.
So about compliance, like the police officers are going to be looking at compliance, like if they say that they want to film until 12:30, what happens if they film until 3 a.m.?
I think from 12:30 to 3 a.m. would not be permitted. Police officers in their general line of work are given discretion, and I would expect that they'd exercise that like time. So yeah, 12:30 if they're wrapping up and they're quiet. And
No.
at 12:45,
I think that's too much of responsibility to put on an officer. I think you have to, if there's a request to go beyond what's agreed to,
Yep.
there has to be a sign off by the desk lieutenant or sergeant. I think that's the appropriate person.
Sure.
And that person can make a judgment whether they need to check with you or check with the chief. But I don't think you can put it on the officer on the street.
okay.
And then with regard to safety, to make sure we don't have any close calls, what can we do for the officer that is assigned?
They need to act like a public safety official. Like if we have an officer assigned to one of these streets during a road closure, they shouldn't be in their car, right? They should be letting school buses through if, you know, as possible. And they should be making sure that pedestrians are safe. I mean, that's their job as public safety officers. It doesn't need to be in an ordinance. I'm sorry to be snarky, but really, like, this isn't really rocket science, some of this stuff.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm kindly asking that Mr. Wary remind them of these.
Yes.
These
And to be
things.
fair, the one that was exemplified on Claremont was not a school bus. It was a van, a school van kind of thing. So it may not have been an obvious school thing.
That's correct.
Right.
So are these police jobs paid jobs or
What?
Outside duty paid,
outside duty paid?
not paid by the township.
Not paid.
Right. So, and we set the standard of how many people, how many officers?
The cops.
Okay, so, you know, we can always push it a little higher so that we have more coverage.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I think that's where I'm going with this. If needed, you know, for safety, then I think we need to ask them to have additional.
And there can be maybe a discussion with the officers on the expectations, because oftentimes on the side jobs, they are kind of slow and so you don't see the officer as much. But these are pretty busy jobs, and it would be good if they could just maintain their visibility.
The jobs are generally slow.
No, Yeah, on some of the road jobs.
That's what I
Yes.
meant. I
Yes.
That's what you meant.
This is not a typical,
It's not a
you
slip.
know, dig a hole in the road job. This is a lot of moving parts.
Right. Okay, I think we've got the message.
Yeah, that's my report, Mayor.
Would you have anything else? That's
If you
the
give me
longest
time, I could
report
think.
you've had in your employment here.
I've had them, next time spread them out over.
Yeah.
meetings.
Yeah.
No, really. Any other questions for Mr. Wary? No, right? Great. Ms. Credidio?
It's been fun.
Yeah, it's been great.
I feel almost obligated to have a report.
No, that's okay if you don't have
It will
anything.
definitely be shorter than Mr. Ware's.
Yeah. that's not hard.
Two things. We have Resolution 222 tonight is endorsing our housing element and fair share plan. We have met all of the timelines and milestones required under the fourth round affordable housing legislation that was passed last year. And this is the final step in the process. Tremendous amount of work that went into a very thorough and expansive housing element and fair share plan. It was considered at the planning board last week. They had robust discussion, and it's before you tonight. One other thing, as you may be aware, we've discussed it, I think, a couple of times before, the continuing state of being able to advertise in newspapers still remains a little up in the air. Star Ledger is our secondary paper that we rely upon if we need to get a notice published more quickly. We are currently still permitted under state law to use the Star Ledger until June 30th. The League of Municipalities is hopeful that there will be some sort of either, again, extension or preferably some kind of permanent fix. 30th, especially as there are governing bodies that reorganize on July 1. It would be nice for them to know what newspapers were available to them, but stay tuned.
Okay. Any questions for Ms. Credidio? Township Clerk, you still there?
Yep.
Okay. Your turn.
Couple things, Mayor,
Mhm.
so I don't lose my reputation. Okay, so I want to report quickly first on the primary election. And of the registered voters in the township, 27% voted during the primary election. So there were 5,935 votes cast with 3,767 or 63% voting for the winner, Miss Jane Collins Colding. Of the total votes, 357 were done through early voting. 3,836 were done on primary election day, and 1,742 were done through mail-in ballots. Give you an idea. The average voter turnout throughout Maplewood was 31%, which is higher than the average for Essex County, which was 19%. So those are some facts. In a nutshell, it was a very smooth election. You know that there were some issues on the voting location at the Clinton School. We worked really hard to get that right. And we're going to have to work really harder to get it correct for November. I don't think it's any fault of the Township of Maplewoods or the clerk's office that administers the election. But again, we're going to have to work harder to make sure that things don't mysteriously go from one room to another in the period of 4 p.m. to 5 a.m. So,
Right.
and
And signs.
the signs, yes.
Or miss-
So we know we have some work to do there, and we will. I just want to comment on tonight's consent agenda. We have the renewal of 3 ABC, well, 3 categories of our ABC licensees: plenary retail distribution, consumption, and club. And I did convey to the Township Committee late this afternoon that we have two licensees who are consumption licensees that are not in compliance, and therefore they are not on the resolutions tonight. We have reached out to them numerous times. One needs tax clearance and the other needs payment to both the state and the township. So what does that all mean? Here's what it means. License is good until June 30th. We meet again on July 1st, which means that hopefully by June 30th, both licensees will be in compliance. And what it means is it really not a big penalty, because if they are, they can do what's called an ad interim permit for 1 day and pay a very small fee to the state to operate for the 1 day until you would consider their license renewal on July 1st, your next meeting. So it's really not that painful if they, do get what they need to do completed by the 30th of June.
And if they don't,
They can't.
They won't be
You have to
operating.
close.
You need, two of the very important things are paying the state fee, the Township of Maplewood fee, and having tax clearance. So, I'm happy to say that every other licensee that we have all complied.
who enforces that? I'm saying, let's say they don't comply by the 30th. Who shuts them down, as it were?
That would be me.
Is Fritzen.
Yeah, that would be me. And
I'm
we've done
scared
it-
of you. I know you shut it
And
down.
we've done it before. But I hate for it to come to that.
Right.
My third quick item is to indicate that we have a lot of event planning meetings coming up, specifically 4th of July tomorrow afternoon. And we have two other large events in August that we'll be having planning meetings for. That is my report.
Thank you. Any questions for our clerk? Seeing none, we'll move on to Township Committee reports. Mr. DeLuca.
Thank you, Mayor. I have a number of
A whole
reports.
page.
Yes, I do have a whole page. I just want to do some updates from the Engineering, Public Works, and Planning Committee. Tonight on our agenda, on our consent agenda, as you mentioned, Mayor, we, items 14C to 14F, we have capital purchase of equipment, trucks and spreaders and tractors for the DPW. This is important for us to be able to do our work. Also, we have 14K resolution, that's the roadway improvements. We're going to be approving $1.13 million for paving, and that's going to go to Riverview Paving, which we've used in the past, so we're happy to be able to work with them. And that should do the roads that we talked about, all the roads that we talked about in our budget hearing. Another item, DeHart Park reconstruction, the Engineering, Public Works, and Planning Committee accepted the recommendation of our engineering consultants to construct the field using a sand base. We discussed whether we wanted to use a sand-based or a soil-based, and we've been using a soil-based for the last couple times, and we were convinced that the sand base was the way to go to move forward. So that's what we're going to be doing. The design now is underway. Before the end of the year, the TC, probably in September, October, the TC will need to adopt a bond ordinance for the DeHart Park construction. We'll have a better idea of what the number is from our consultants, and we'll be able to move forward. Boyden Avenue, we had some requests to do some crosswalk striping. That will be done as part of our traffic calming bidding that we're going to do. We're going to do all the crosswalks on Boyden Avenue, spruce them up. We're also going to enhance the pedestrian crossing at Jacoby Street. We have some new businesses there. We're going to be replacing the sign we have there, the blinking sign, with the high-intensity blinking, flashing, so that'll work there. And we now have all of our signs installed in the public lots. We've expanded the overnight parking. The clerk's office is aware of that. And we should do some public information on that to let our residents know that we have expanded the overnight parking in some of our parking lots and what the process is, and you can get that information from the clerk's office. I'm going to move to the Public Safety Committee. Got some very good news. Our crime statistics for our major crimes for the first third of the year, January through April, and this includes robberies, aggravated assaults, burglaries, thefts, auto thefts, of course, homicides, arsons, and rape. In general, all the incidents are down 20%, going from 109 in the same period of 2024 to 87 in 2025. So that's a decrease in 22 incidents, and that's a 20% reduction. And that's, I want to thank the police, and our detective bureau is doing a really good job in following up and solving some of these cases. On traffic enforcement, which has been a huge priority for us here at the Township Committee, we're doing much better. Our moving violations, again, through the same period, January through April, from 24 to 25, we've had a 32% increase in moving violations. Just in April, we had a 36% increase. So, you know, not that again, we don't want to give out tickets, but we also want people to obey the laws. We hear over and over again, people are concerned about traffic and the way in which people are driving. So the other thing I wanted to mention is vehicle stops. This is police stopping vehicles for traffic enforcement, you know, suspicion, driving, things like that, you know, that makes a warrant, a stop warranted. We had an increase of 33% from 2024 to 2025, again, for that, the first third of the year. And just in April, we had a 44% from 2024 to 2025, 191 more vehicle stops. So we want to thank the police for doing, you know, what we've been asking them to do, and compliment the chief and the captains and lieutenants for taking our message and implementing it on the street. I think people feel very, you know, very concerned about traffic and parking, and this is something that we're trying to get a handle on. Ms. Credidio mentioned the affordable housing. I do want to talk about that a bit. That's Resolution 14.P, and that's a resolution to endorse the fourth round housing element and fair share plan. I did hear the planning board conversation. Unfortunately, we didn't really have representation from the Affordable Housing Board, so I'm going to give it now. You know, there was some question about why did we accept the 216 number that was required in the, you know, DCA report. So, you know, the Affordable Housing Board discussed that and with our consultant, Mr. Mastretti, and based on his recommendation and his knowledge, that even if we decided to challenge the number based on what we have here, we might get the number down from 216 to 214. And plus we would have to challenge it. We would be, you know, we would publicly challenge our housing number, and that's not what we do. So there was really no gain to do that. So the Affordable Housing Board recommended to the Township Committee, and the Township Committee accepted the 216 number, and that's for new units over the next 10 years. So we're going to do that. Remember, they also recommended, and the plan calls for a change in our set-asides from 15% to 20%. So I think we want to do that after we submitted this, right? Mr. Credidio, we want to try to give this in the summer, or at least by September, get that on the books after the closure. Okay, so let's just tee that up so that we get that going. There was also a comment about our plan to do the 48 units of 100% affordable housing, and it really wasn't explained very well by Mr. Mastretti, because he wasn't working on it, so it was to be expected that he wouldn't know it. But we've been working with the Ingerman Group. They came to us through requests for proposals. We interviewed a number of, we reviewed proposals from over 10 companies. We interviewed 4, and we picked Ingerman, and we've come up with, you know, a plan to do 48 units of affordable housing. And I'll just give you the breakdown because I think it's important that what we talk about, because I think people have misconceptions or whatever conceptions when you talk about affordable housing. So the 48 breakout, that 7 would be very low income, and that's, let's say, a family of 4 that would make around $40,000 or below. And then 17 would be low income units, and that's for a family of 4 that makes about 65,000 or below. And then 24 would be moderate income units, and that for a family of 4 would make about 105,000. So it's going to be a mix. I think the Affordable Housing Board wanted to have a mix there. Additionally, in that 48 unit complex, there will be roughly about 10 to 15% special needs.
Yeah.
We intend to work with Jesby House and try to make that happen. We've had some conversations with them. So it is going to be a mixed income, mixed population, and that's what we're working on. Now, where's the land? We're looking for land. It's very difficult to find vacant land in Maplewood, so that's what we're looking to do. And then finally, there was a lot of talk about the movie theater. We have not yet done that plan. We will do that plan. That plan will have a 20% set aside for affordable units on site. Whatever is the final unit number, final units to be built there, and that's going to be a factor of height and parking and density requirements. Whatever that number is, it's going to be 20%. We use the placeholder of 100 just to give us, a possible working number. So if it's 100 units, 20% or 20 of those would be affordable units. And again, it would be an income mix. So moving next, July 4th, we have our celebration coming up. And I just want to go through the quick agenda. We have our 9 o'clock is the 5K race. 10 o'clock is the bike parade. 10:30, we're going to do kids fun runs. 12 o'clock is the adult softball. It's a pickup game across the street here in Memorial Park. 1:30, we're doing bingo. For those of you who want to do a 4th of July bingo, come on out. And at 3 o'clock, we have the ice cream eating contest. I don't want to brag about who won last year, but
You should not be allowed to compete this year.
4 p.m. we have the pet parade, and then 9 o'clock we have fireworks, and at 7:30 that Memorial Park South opens up. The next day on July 5th, we have the grand opening of our library, and that's at 11 a.m. And we're going to be closing Baker Street. Everyone should have gotten a postcard in the mail.
I got one.
And please come on out. It's going to be a great celebration. One more quick item, and then just one more thing. Bike lane meeting is going to be next Tuesday, the 24th. That's at 7:30 p.m. That's going to be entirely a Zoom meeting. And you can get the Zoom link on the Township website. We've done letters out to folks. We've done a publicity campaign, and we're moving to that. We anticipate on July 15th at the Township Committee meeting, we'll have a vote to proceed or not to proceed. And lastly, I just want to state, as a public official, we're all public officials and we're all out there, that there's just something wrong in this country when public officials are being arrested. Today, the New York City Controller, Brad Lander, who's a candidate for mayor, was arrested by ICE agents.
Without a warrant.
Mayor Baraka was arrested. Senator Padilla of California was thrown to the ground and handcuffed. This stuff has to stop. And, there's got to be somebody down in Washington in the House or the Senate that's going to speak up for this. And I think we at the local level, at the county level, at the state level have to do that. But there's got to be some oversight that comes from Congress here, because we can't have this. We can't have elected officials, and they're all Democrats.
Yeah.
They're all Democrats.
No
And
coincidence.
the president is saying that he's going after Democratic cities.
Yeah.
So this has got to stop, and we've got to speak out, and we need some partners speaking out at the state level and certainly at the federal level. So
Do you want a resolution?
I don't think it's necessary. I think people just need to do it. a resolution. We just need to make sure
Yeah.
they do it. So, and that's my,
He went for, I think you might have just beat Mr. Weary by a minute or so.
I may have.
Do we,
May have.
Questions?
do we do a motion to move beyond 9:30? I think we might need it.
Let's see where we
Blame it
are
on me.
first. Mr. Daffis, you're next.
Also, we should condemn the political violence, not just the harassment.
Right.
Right, oh, yeah.
There's been violence against elected officials, hunting them
Maybe.
down, targeting them, and you know, it's just as you said, Committee Member DeLuca. I don't know what our elected representatives are doing in Congress in terms of speaking out about this. Aside from issuing, a statement of condemnation on social media that one of their staffers put together. As Committee Member DeLuca mentioned, the Planning Board did review our housing element and approved it after some discussion. And thank you for providing additional context about some of the things that were discussed. And I just want to say, because we are talking to the public here, earlier today, I did a presentation on affordable housing along with a panel of developers. And I think the way we talk about affordable housing is wrong. It's wrong. And it's just rife with stigma, and it's life cycle housing. That's what it is. And that's why we need to do it. It's meeting the needs, different housing needs for all kinds of people throughout the various stages of life. That includes our seniors, aging in place, affordable and accessible housing. It includes those with disabilities and special needs, supportive housing. It includes workforce housing, our teachers, our firemen and firewomen, the people who keep our communities safe and together can't afford to live here. It includes housing for youth. We have our college graduates returning and living with their parents because home ownership is impossible right now in ways it was not just a generation ago. So we need to start talking about housing production in New Jersey as life cycle housing. Life cycle housing is housing justice, it's housing equity. So I just wanted to put that on the record. Last night, we met, the Board of School Estimate met. We were presented with 4 proposals for improvements at Ritzer Field and provided budgets for each of those proposals. We had a long conversation and lots of public comment. I do think that the discussion of this is kind of going all over the place, and we're relitigating certain things. The bottom line is that the BOE will make a decision in July about which of the 4 proposals they want to put forward. It's their decision. And then the Board of School Estimate will reconvene to review that plan and its budget. We'll have more information at that time, and we will make a decision as to the financing, bond ordinance, and so on. One good thing a couple great things that came out of the discussion last night, we learned that the district is leaning into community engagement, significant community engagement with all the residents, especially the Hickson residents. Obviously, they live right there on the border of the field, and they have some concerns about stormwater mitigation and runoff. And we understand that they will be engaged in the planning process. And also that since the field is in Maplewood, that a cursory review by the planning board will also happen too when we get to that stage later this year or early next year. So that's great. That's great. These are the things that should be happening in terms of transparency and engagement. That's good government. And then lastly, If you've attended one of our Pride events, hopefully you had a really good time and you felt more proud, especially in this environment right now where there's a lot of hate and discrimination against the LGBTQ community in particular. And I'm really proud of all of our organizers who went forward with a festival that was great despite the rain and the challenges with weather. The events that we organized as a township, including in partnership with other community partners, Lavender Graduation, got a lot of notice around the state this year. And I know some of you have seen that we were reported at NJ.com as the only school district that participates in Lavender Graduation. Really, really proud of that. And big shout out to my co-organizer of that, Shannon Cuttle. So that's my report, Mayor. Take any questions.
Thanks. Any questions from anyone? Deputy Mayor Herman.
All right. I want to thank, this is our first Township Committee meeting since the election. I want to thank everyone for coming out to vote in the primary, which was on a different day than normal. And I want to say congratulations to Jane Collings-Colding for your successful bid for Township Committee. I've gotten to know Jane last fall campaigning for Kamala Harris and having Jane on the Senior Advisory Committee. So I am looking forward to getting to know you better. And I want to, again, thank everyone for coming out to vote. Juneteenth, I read a really great resolution earlier in this meeting, and we have 2 events happening this weekend. So I want to share with everyone these 2 events. We have one in Maplewood and one in South Orange. So a lot of times what we do with South Orange, just so everyone knows, we alternate events back and forth. So we take turns, and we do this with Juneteenth. So the event in South Orange is something that last year we had it here in Maplewood, and this year it is in South Orange, and next year it'll be back here in Maplewood. So, so that is our joint event. We have so the 2 events are, first, we're kicking it off at 5 o'clock at the 1978 Arts Center over on Springfield Avenue. We have an opening reception from 5 to 8 called Celebrating Juneteenth, the things they carried, the stories they told, passions of the unseen. So this is a really exciting exhibition, and the artists will be there, and there will be light refreshments. So please come by. 1978 on Springfield Avenue. It is 1978 Springfield Avenue, so you can't forget that. And then go on over to South Orange because they're having on Friday, the same night, starting at 6:30, and their event goes from 6:30 to 9:30 at Floods Hill in South Orange. Juneteenth, a freedom celebration. Join us at Floods Hill for a vibrant evening of live music, inspiring readings, amazing food trucks, and a dazzling fireworks show. Love the fireworks. Let's come together to honor history, celebrate freedom, and uplift our community. So 2 great events on Friday to look forward to. I also want to make sure everyone knows that our swim lessons went up for registration on yesterday. Wait, no, today's Tuesday. Today. They went up for registration today, so sign up. I'm very proud of the fact that we're going to be offering more weekend classes. We heard the community loud and clear that they sold out, and it's a lot easier for working parents and parents with kids in camps to be able to sign up on the weekend. So adult swim lessons are coming, so keep an eye out for that. We're going to be doing that again as well. Inclusive Playground, the Inclusive Playground at Maplecrest Park. We're going to be having a public meeting next week, so look out for more information on that. It will be here next Wednesday at 7:30, and it will be both in person and online, and so you can watch it that night or the recording. But we're going to be presenting where we're at with the plan so we can move this forward. Another project we can be all very excited about.
Did we all get an invite on that? No.
No, it's coming. Yes.
Okay.
How convenient.
Wednesday to Wednesday. Good.
Yeah, exactly. And finally, I wanted to thank Mr. Daffis for the summation of the BOES meeting last night. I think it was a really good discussion. I was also very pleased to hear that they would be taking a more community-oriented approach in involving the Maplewood Planning Board. I know that's something that has been brought up, and that they also would be taking, having a working group with Hickson residents. Another exciting thing that came out of that meeting is the school district announced they were going to start doing middle school sports. So I'm very excited to hear more on that. I think that's wonderful and will be something to really bring the community together. And I look forward to, working with the Board of Education on the plan that they put forward. And again, thank them for involving us in that and for the really, I think, productive conversation last night. And that's my report. 9:27.
Thank you. Any questions for Deputy Mayor Herman?
3 minutes.
Okay, I'll make a motion to extend past 9:30.
I'll move it. I'll second.
Mr. Daffis?
Yes.
Luca?
Yes.
Ms. Herman?
Yes.
Mayor Adams?
Yes, thank you. My colleagues always cover everything before it gets to me, which is fine. I'm not going to be redundant just so I can talk. But I will mention that July 12th and 13th is Maple Woodstock. So mark your calendars. That's the weekend after the 4th of July. So Maple Woodstock, 2 days, noon to 10 and noon to 9, something like that. But anyway, that's coming, right? We had the event meeting and all is going well. So that's all I have because you guys all had it. The Board of School Estimate meeting was longer than anticipated, as always, with Board of School Estimate and a long discussion. So yeah, I didn't agree with the outcome, but what else is new? I did get some emails thanking me for speaking up for what I believe is the right thing to do in spite of being in the minority on that. So that was nice to hear. So if there's no questions for me, we have no discussion items, and I'll ask for a motion on the consent agenda.
Mayor, I move the consent agenda.
Second.
Mr. Daffis?
Yes.
Luca?
Yes.
Herman?
Yes.
Mayor Adams?
Yes, and that brings us to our last public comment, any subject matter at all. So yes, come on up, give your name and address, and you have 3 minutes to speak.
Hi, Ethan Weinberg again, 39 Claremont Avenue. I just want to, provide a couple follow-up comments because it was great to hear you guys look at the ordinance that you're passing and think about how you're going to use it broadly to address some of the concerns that people raised. I want to appreciate that Mr. Wary is obviously working very hard to make sure that things are going to go smoothly for the rest of the shoot as it impacts the folks in my neighborhood. There are 2 things that I just wanted to raise. In terms of expanded notice, the mayor was asking about that. I think you should use that extremely broadly. It's obviously a very low burden for a PA on a production shoot to deliver some pieces of paper to a few more homes than they were
Sure.
planning to do.
Mhm.
So just would really hope that you do that. And it's been clear from the notices that I've seen that they're not following the terms of the notices that have gone out in terms of like where they say folks are going to be parking. I don't know if they're required to notice just, the crew vehicles, the personal crew vehicles that people may be, driving. I understand that, for example, people are parking those on Claremont Drive, even though those are not like the big trucks, that's obviously still taking up space. So I don't know exactly what they need to be including in that notice, but obviously would encourage you to take that as broadly as possible. And then the other piece of it is enforcement. I think the deputy mayor was talking about that as well. I honestly don't know what you do in the middle of the day. If you find, for example, we were told, the main actor came late, so everything was shifted by a couple hours, and that's why things were closed, at different times than what they expected. And you're obviously putting a lot of a burden on the officer who's there to decide if he's going to revoke a permit on the spot, shut down a thing. Obviously, this is a long-term relationship, at least over this summer, that the town's going to have with this production crew.
Mhm.
Just would encourage you to think about what it's going to mean if this production crew is not following through with what they say they're going to be doing. How many strikes are they going to get? Are you going to be doing anything on a given day? Obviously, sometimes it's too late. If, for example, someone's got a plumber who's supposed to be, coming by their house to resolve a leak and then they can't get in, you can't really do anything.
Mhm.
Slap on the wrist, a day later. So just wanted to encourage you to think broadly about what you can do to, effectuate the concerns that people have raised.
Great, thank you. Mr. Wary, that would be a nice thing to mention the production crew if there is a delay or anything like Kevin Klein showing up late. You know, we can't yell at Kevin Klein, but we can, if they can communicate with you, then you can communicate with the officer on the street and let them know. Go ahead. Hub. Okay,
Hi, my name is Patrick Holtgren. I live at 205 Wyoming. I think I've met some of you before. I've lived in town since 2019. Both of me and my wife are veterans. Are you aware of the parking situation around scooters at the train station?
yes, yes.
Okay. Was there a change in ordinance or anything in that fashion? I'm part of a group of people who usually park in and around there, and we've all been ticketed.
Right. So we talked about it both at Engineering and Public Works on last Wednesday and at the Public Safety meeting that evening. And I believe our direction was for our public safety for police to look into it, for engineering to look into. That's right, thank you. Using some spaces that would normally be for cars and then having a permit situation. They're going to look at all different options, including maybe some space that's not used for anything, not big enough for a car or something. And then, so we're looking into having them look into alternatives around the train station on both sides to see where we can accommodate scooters.
That would be great. Thank you.
Yeah,
Appreciate it. Right now I'm driving and parking in Milburn.
no. Yeah, and the next engineering meeting is July.
Yeah, so it's going to take some time.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, it's going to take.
You know, so we have it's the second Wednesday, I think it's the 11th, or the 9th rather.
And it's on Zoom at 8
yeah,
AM, so.
but,
Want to come and.
you know, I think the police chief made it clear that you can't park on the sidewalk. That's essentially what you know has been happening. So we've asked the engineer to figure out as the mayor said, figure out something else. Once we agree to that, then we have to implement it. So it's
Yeah.
going to take a bit of time.
I think any just overhead cover in and around the train station, you know, if that takes.
Yeah,
That's a problem with the cover,
right.
because what we're looking at is to take a parking space that doesn't have cover. So, you know,
We'll be
that's some
talking
of it.
about it,
But the other thing is that, you know, this is, if we have some parking there, it's, you know, right now you guys are not paying any kind of parking fee where other cars are paying a parking fee. So we'd have to figure that out too.
Right. I mean, that could be a deterrent for people using cars is one perspective at that. So you're
Mhm.
driving people to use some other form of transportation if you don't want people parking and you want to reduce the overall traffic that's going on downtown. So there's a way, you know, there's a counter to that too. Yeah, but no, any kind of dedicated.
It might also be a reduced fee. Yeah, and any ideas you have, like if you're around the train station, please feel free to email us or come to Engineering Public Works and during public comment at the top of the meeting, you can offer up some suggestions.
If I may ask, what is the accommodation in Milburn?
Well, I cheat a little bit. I'm a disabled veteran, so I have
Mm.
technically free parking. And so I park it in their parking garage downtown.
I see.
Okay.
Oh,
Parking
okay,
garage
yeah,
there.
yeah.
And I put it in the parking garage, so there's cover there. Obviously, it's a huge facility, so
Right.
I mean, I'm not parking legitimately, you know, so somebody could give me a ticket down there, but nobody has yet at this time.
Shh.
So are you able to park in a designated handicap zone?
No, I could park in the commuter lot though, hang my tag on my scooter, which some high school student would steal, which I would understand. And that would allow me to have that parking space for the day without paying. So
Right.
I could take a car spot away, which I obviously don't want to do. That's the whole point of having a scooter is you don't take a car spot away.
Right.
So that's just for me, or I guess somebody else that had some sort of, you know, certification to be able to park complimentary from the town.
Right.
Great.
Anyways.
Okay.
Interesting.
Well, we're working on it.
Yeah, no,
Promise.
thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you. Hi.
Again, from Hemlock Court, and I
No.
do want to share some more follow-ups.
Okay.
So in my conversation with you on Thursday, there were two things that you shared. One was you don't have capacity to do site visits after permits are issued. And we talked about that makes sense. You're not there to do site visits. I don't want to add staff to the community, but enforcement is important. So it needs to be solved for. So I just want to acknowledge that comment from you. And I had called you after I walked over to the site with the letter of inform. Sorry, first I called the police department and I said, this is where I live, this is what's going on. How much longer is this going to be blocked? She said, I don't know, you need to go call the officer on duty, or you need to speak to the officer on duty. So I walked to the site. They sent somebody from crew who said Kevin Klein was hours late. We're almost done, it'll be soon. So I said, what's that, 15 minutes? Because by the way, it was 2:15 and my son's bus comes somewhere around 2:45. Then I walked to the police officer and the police officer said, I don't know, I'm just here. I'm just here for as long as they want me. So I just want to loop that back to the comment and like, they're doing their job. Like there's a lot of people just doing their job. The failure is in the integration. I also heard you mention that parking is a real struggle in the community. We talk about it all the time. He just told you that there's permits for a Friday to a Friday, or else it's two individual Fridays, filming on Maplewood Avenue from 5 a.m. to 12 a.m. Did you notice today how many spots were taken up with crew cars with New York plates? Did you notice the double parked box truck in front of the Bergdorf? Like, this is not working. When you are approving permits 2 weeks out, you're not looking at the big picture. This is a series that's being filmed in our community. So the scope of impact is significant, and there are a lot of things that you need to think about. Yes, you can talk to the police officer. Yes, you can revoke permits. But I think what you said to me was, we have a bunch of permits for the next several days this summer. It's not like I'm gonna not grant the permits at this time. That's what you actually said to me. So at this point, can you revoke? Will you revoke? Will you deny permits? What is the scope? How are you going to enforce? It all feels like lip service to me. It's not real. Make it real. This is a TV series. It's not going to end. The other thing is in terms of implementation, one, if you're going to move it forward, how about you limit production? They can't work during school commute hours. They can't block the sidewalks. They can't have 18 wheelers parked up and down a residential street. Those are some practical, real things that could happen for this to like improve for the community. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else in the room who'd like to speak to the Township Committee?
Third statement. This is Eve Moravsky. I use PO Box 32 in Maplewood, New Jersey, 07040. Unfortunately, Milburn Library is under construction, so I couldn't use their printer. Their didn't have a working printer, so I'm winging it.
Okay.
5 paragraphs from a letter that I have been sharing with the New Jersey legislature, but I'm going to email this statement to Liz, and it's going to refer to my dog, so I brought her picture so that you know what I'm writing. In December 2022, I was evicted from my childhood home at 60 Maplewood Avenue, 60 years due to a proven fraudulent property tax. June 7th marked 2.5 years. Born in Rowway and raised in Maplewood, I've always been independent and, prior to incessant litigation against me, financially stable with no debt. I paid my way through school, working concurrent jobs, satisfying all my loans. After graduate school, I became a Navy wife and subsequently moved 10 times in 10 years. My life began to unravel when, far from home, my military officer husband exposed his sociopathy. I went through a very difficult divorce from an abusive narcissist who prolonged litigation because he could. I was a reluctant legal trailblazer, as it is my understanding the family court in Honolulu changed law regarding discovery after he was granted 88 nonsensical subpoenas. It is on record and reviewed that I did everything I could to settle. While the case dragged on, I moved back from Hawaii to care for my parents because my sister and her family, who lived close by, chose to ignore them. I was their sole full-time caregiver for 2.5 years as they both deteriorated with terminal cancer. My mother died 5 months after my father. My World War II veteran parents left our home to me as their legacy. They provided substantial funding for my sister and her family over decades, including buying a house which I rescued for her out of tax lien sale. They owed double what I eventually did on mine. My parents and I were never repaid for loans we made to them, in addition to the bailouts they frequently received. My sister never helped me. She receives at least 4 incomes in retirement. Getting to the eviction. The movers trashed the interior of my home, stole personal property they were supposed to pack, and helped themselves to the pantry and bar cart. When I entered my house the night of eviction to walk the rooms and say goodbye, I was enraged seeing their vandalism and theft. My reaction to this egregious violation of my personal property led to my arrest. I was carried out unconscious and woke up in the trauma unit of the hospital. I was shackled to the bed with handcuffs, 2 officers on watch in the hospital room. Transferred at 3 a.m. in paper hospital pajamas and socks, first to the Maplewood Police Station, then the Essex County Correctional Facility. I was jailed 35 nights over Christmas and New Year's. Released late one freezing January night, waited at the bus stop for transport to a friend's apartment. I spent 5 months under house arrest, 1 year probation, community service at an animal shelter, weekly therapist visits, wrapping up in a singular mental crisis diagnosis. The judge said she had never received so many letters on behalf of a defendant before. At 60, I had an undeserved, unwarranted criminal conviction. The perpetrators were never held accountable, and when I tried to arrange pickup of the lid for my truck, anticipating correctly I would be living in my vehicle, I was told they were victims and I was not to harass them. Unfortunately, I saw pictures of my cherished possessions in dumpsters. They flipped my home for $719,000. The real estate developers they sold it to got $1.3 million. Again, the original debt was under $13,000. One more paragraph. I have to reference the New York Times article. They wrote 2 stories about me and the equity theft that occurred. Other media riffed off of them, which is to say demonstrably misrepresented me and the circumstances leading to the loss of my highly desirable property to a real estate speculator shell corporation. The reporter never met me, only spoke on the phone once, but interpreted some of what I said into a pre-written negative narrative for clicks and knowingly ignored emails sent with requested information. She used my sister, Ann Turalski, as a never-named source, which precluded searching her and the inconvenient truths that would undermine the crafted spin. Like Turalski's $1 million suit against me, some of the 800+ comments I skimmed were supportive, but others were vitriolic and questioned my mental health. The Times did not publish my letter to the editor or any of my supporters. Who holds the media accountable? The disparagement cavalierly conveyed on an influential, wide-ranging platform has been irrevocably devastating to my health and job prospects. You did not have my back. You ignore me at events that we have attended together. I have seen you, you've seen me. Never how you doing, Eve, how's it going, before, during, or after the calamity. Hundreds of people knew what was going on before this happened. This is about half of the people that I contacted, and no one did a bloody thing. So I want this on record that I have not vanished. I'm trying the hell hard to get a job and to find a home. I've worked through agencies and hundreds of applications. So know this about me, because I have stood in this room as a junior and Brownie Girl Scout getting awards. I have planted the tree that is the tallest in what was the Jefferson Courtyard as a second grader. My memories will always love this hometown, but what happened to me should not have happened. So I just want to say that mano a womano to those who know about this, because you never answered my emails or were concerned about me while people were calling the hospital, checking in with me, sending me Christmas cards at the prison. It's an experience I never could have imagined for myself. I do believe in God. I lean into my faith and my integrity. I've learned a lot about myself and about others, and I'm trying to take those lessons and ultimately it'll be sorted out. But I am true to the inspiration and motivation that the sacrifices my parents made. I have to be true to that and honor that.
Thank you. Is there anyone else in the room who would like to speak? Mr. Weary, anyone online?
Hi,
Hi.
Hi.
I'm Angela Matusik. I didn't know I'd be on camera. I live at 13 Salter Place. Thank you very much for this long and informative evening. I've really learned a lot listening in. I have one question regarding the housing element. Last week, the author had mentioned that it needed to be approved by 3/31/26. And today I heard Mr. DeLuca mention I believe a date of like September 30th. And I was just wondering if there were other deadlines and what might be the township's schedule for reviewing, modifying, and approving the redevelopment plan.
Yeah, go ahead, Ms. Cordelia.
So the 3/31/26 deadline is to enact the zoning that is reflected in the housing element and fair share plan. So both the set-asides that Mr. DeLuca mentioned and also the redevelopment plan for the movie theater area, as that is anticipated as an area where redevelopment will occur.
What is the September 3rd?
I'm not familiar with the September 30th deadline offhand, but I will coordinate with Mr. Nolan.
I thought,
Yes, I believe Victor DeLuca mentioned a September deadline or something, but maybe I didn't hear it correctly. If you could just clarify.
Oh,
I thought that was the objection period, right?
I'm sorry. So the objection period is actually through the end of August, but what Mr. DeLuca had mentioned is even though we have until the March deadline in order to put the zoning and the set-aside in place, we were planning on putting the set-aside, teeing up the set-aside ordinance that's referenced in the housing element for September,
Right.
not week.
Does that clarify it for you?
It does, but I do hope that we receive some more clarification regarding the theater redevelopment plan and when the future meetings that you had mentioned previously might be scheduled for that.
Yes, when we have a schedule, we'll of course let everyone know. It'll be one more public meeting that the Township Committee decided to do, and then we'll go through the process of approving it as an ordinance and then taking it to the planning board and then back to the Township Committee. So, sure.
So I think you know that the Historic Preservation Commission had some questions about their role. So we're sorting that out, and that's being sorted out right now. And once we get that sorted out, we're going to be able to take a look at at the draft plan to see what changes need to be made. And then I think we've agreed to have the meeting here so that it could be a hybrid meeting similar to what we're doing right now.
Correct.
the public meeting that the mayor spoke about. And that will be probably in early fall.
Did you
Thank
say?
you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else online? Did you say 9:55 earlier today?
Was last week we spoke. If any member of the public would like to speak in public portion, please raise your hand now. I see no hands, Mayor.
Great. Okay, thank you. May I get a motion to adjourn?
I move that we adjourn.
Second.
Staffis,
Yes.
DeLuca,
Yes.
Herman,
Yes.
Mayor Adams.
Yes, thank you. Good night, everyone, and we'll see you July 1st, right?